Hello Year 10, Mrs Butcher here. I hope that everyone is doing okay. I realise that it is very difficult to work from home on your own without your teachers. I thought I would just create a little video for you to talk you through the Christmas Carol Week 4 assessment task that I set you. As I said on the first slide of the PDF, this isn't meant to stress you out at all. I don't want to cause any extra anxiety, but it's just designed to kind of see where you're up to in your understanding of the novel, and just to see if you can have a go at some of the skills that the examiners will be looking for in your exam. So this is basically practice for part A of the question, which actually is incredibly similar to your language and structure questions for the language paper. Essentially, what the examiner is looking for is for you to pull out language devices like powerful verbs, adjectives, metaphors, personification, alliteration, and structural devices like listing, juxtaposition, punctuation use, etc. And to look at how Dickens has used those techniques to try and explore key themes in the novel. So the question I set you was an extract taken from the end of stave 3, where the ghost of Christmas present opens his robe to reveal the figures of ignorance and want. And the question asks you, how does Dickens present those figures? So when a question asks you how a writer presents, it just means how do they use those language devices and those structural devices to have their desired effect on the audience. So I'll start by reading through the first part of the extract. From the foldings of its robe, it brought 2 children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at its feet and clung upon the outside of its garment. "Oh, man, look here, look down here," exclaimed the ghost. They were a boy and a girl, yellow, meagre, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate too, in their humility, where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints. A stale and shrivelled hand, like that of age, had pinched and twisted them, and pulled them into shreds. Where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out menacing. No change, no degradation, no perversion of humanity in any grade through all the mysteries of wonderful creation has Munster's half so horrible and dread. Okay, the first thing to remember when you're answering questions like this is you have to have an understanding of the extract as a whole, because if you just dive in and start randomly pulling out adjectives or nouns or listing, without any idea of the sense, the feeling, the tone the writer's trying to create, the ideas that they're trying to express, your answer will be a bit dislocated. So we'll have a think first of all about exactly what the figures of ignorance and want represent. Now, in the original PDF with the lesson, I've given you lots of information on there. So we've established that they represent conditions at this time in London. It's post-industrialisation. There's a lot of poverty. There's people suffering in extreme wealth people suffering in extreme poverty next to people enjoying great wealth. And so the figures of ignorance and want, they're metaphorical. Ignorance represents people like Scrooge, who are blind to the plight of the poor children and poor families. And want represents need, poverty, hunger. And Dickens is obviously trying to put an idea across to the reader about this, that this is a terrible situation and that Scrooge has been living too long in ignorance, and that he needs to be confronted with the reality of this terrible situation. Okay, so we've got an overall idea of the purpose of the scene. It's shocking. It's meant to bring home the truth to Scrooge. It's meant to show the Victorian readers what some of the key messages of the novel are. So now what we have to do is we have to pick out specific features which help Dickens to put this message across. So I would probably start with the introduction of two children, followed by a semicolon, and then the listing of wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, and miserable. So we can see already here there's some use of juxtaposition, which is contrast, isn't there? Because ideas that we'd normally associate with children, so innocence, joy, are sort of turned on their head. There's a word we can use for that. It's called inversion. If someone inverts an idea, it means they twist it round, they turn it upside down. And all of these words, they're adjectives, aren't they? Wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They're deeply unpleasant. They're deeply concerning. So he's already using this list to introduce the children as these shocking, sort of forsaken, odd creatures, which will be visually very, very shocking for Scrooge to encounter. And there's a structural point there. The fact that there's a list, it means that it kind of follows his thought process, because there's this tumbling out of these hideous images. It's not just one adjective that's been, one unpleasant adjective which has been used to describe them. It's many. So it's really that list drumming home quite how shocking the appearance of these two children is. Something else you could pick out for your second sentence in this first bit of the extract: they knelt down and clung. Those are both doing words, they're both verbs. And if you kneel and you cling, to cling means to grab on. In itself, we can see that creates a sense that they're desperate, that they're needy, that they're powerless, which again represents the poor people of London at this time. We can see that the ghost itself, through the use of the exclamative, oh man, look here, look down here. It's not only an exclamative, it's an imperative as well. And there's repetition, look. It shows how determined the ghost is, that Scrooge is confronted and does look at this really uncomfortable scene in front of him, which again shows us the question is about how the figures of wanton ignorance are presented. It shows us that they are significant. They're a significant part of the plot. They're a significant part of Scrooge's character development. We have the nouns boy and girl. So we've got a representation of each, but again, there's little description. That's quite a stark, short sentence. But then again, it's followed, as if we didn't get the message the first time, by another long list of both adjectives and verbs, which is designed to increase the horror of the sight of them even further, and again shock us and shock Scrooge. Yellow, well, that's got connotation. Remember, a connotation is associated meaning. It's got connotations of illness, of jaundice. Meagre, it means small, it means slight, it means skinny. Ragged, we know what ragged means, scowling and wolfish. So they're angry, but then they're prostrate too. So that means they're kind of humble, they're submissive. There's nothing they can do about their situation. We've got more use on the next line of juxtaposition. Graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints. But instead there's a stale and shrivelled hand. So whereas they should have been filled with all the things that we associate with youth, health and cheerfulness, instead we've got the stale and shriveled, like that of age. And I feel like the use of sibilants there, the S sound, creates a hissing sound. Again, we've got that sense of anger, which is reinforced by the verbs pinch and twisted and pulled. So these are some of the ideas. You can see that I've pulled out quite a few techniques already, just from those opening few lines. So all you're looking to do for this question is to, first of all, I would summarise what the figures ignorance and want represent. So need, inequality, the rich people like Scrooge refusing to see the reality of the poor and the suffering and the needy. I would say something about how this scene is meant to be shocking. Scrooge, as part of his character development, needs to be shocked into making a change. And then you're going in and you're using your basic P-E-E, so point in the opening line Dickens uses and then name the technique, evidence, put the quotation in, explanation, you're pulling out the individual words, the individual techniques, and you're describing exactly what the effect is. Have a go. Don't worry about getting it wrong. If you don't get it quite right, that's absolutely fine. But let's just have a go and see what you can come up with. Okay. I will speak to you soon. Thank you.